We've all heard reports that Jerry Jones has become, quote, infatuated with Kyle Pitts ahead of the NFL draft, and it sounds like the Florida tight end reciprocates the interest. In an interview earlier this week, Pitts revealed he had a convo with Jerry and said, quote, "It's an honor for him to say that. Dallas is a great team. If I could have the opportunity to play for the Cowboys, it would be a great thing." Dallas has the 10th selection in the draft, which is 13 days from now. Greg Jennings, what does Dallas need to do the rest of the offseason to get back to the playoffs?
Well, they better look at the defensive side of the ball. I wouldn't be mad if Kyle Pitts is there for the taking. If he is available, you take him. I do not think he will be available for the Dallas Cowboys at the number 10 pick. But they have to focus defensively. When you look at what they lack and what's in their division, what the Giants have acquired as a receiver in Galladay, what the Washington football team have acquired at receiver, you have to focus on how you're going to guard those guys. And how you guard those guys is with cornerbacks. So alongside Trayvon Diggs, you don't really have a second guy that you're really going to hang your hat on right now. You can get that in this draft. This is a very cornerback strong driven draft that they can grab pretty much who they want. They will have their pick of the litter right here in front of them at the 10th pick. You have to go and solidify that defense. When you look at the linebackers, they can improve at the linebacker position. Van Der Esch and Jalen Smith, they both had down years. We know that they're good players, but they're getting older, specifically Smith, and you have some injury concern possibly. So I think you have to focus solely on defense unless Kyler Pitts is available. And if he is available, man, you got to take that guy.
You got to get on the same page. And Coach McCarthy has to make sure he has these conversations. You know, we're having all these conversations about not being able to, or players not wanting to come do OTAs and do mini camps. That will play a part in continuity. That will play a part in chemistry. There have to be conversations. You know, you got to have that, as we mentioned earlier, Greg, you got to have those come to Jesus conversations at this point. You have talent on your roster. You have great personnel in a lot of different positions. Skill-wise on offense, they have a plethora of weapons. So if I'm Mike McCarthy, if I'm Jerry Jones, I have to have the conversation. We have to stop living in the past of what the Dallas Cowboys have been and what they have represented. And we have to start looking at mimicking what they were in the substance of how they played on the football field, not the reputation and the popularity off of it. This team, Ezekiel Elliott, you got to get back to running the ball. You got to be able to get to 100 yards plus a game. You got to be able to carry the load where if you don't get to 100 yards, you still pull that defense up and they got to load the box up and it opens up things for our receivers. Receivers, Amari, CeeDee Lamb, Gallup, you guys got to get open. You got to make big plays. You got to drink the yak, right? You got to get the ball, get yards after the catch. You got to do things that are going to make this offense a better offense. On defense, you just got to play better altogether. We could talk about personnel groupings. We could talk about guys you can draft. If you do get Pitts, you definitely are improving your team. But if you get a guy in the top 10 on defense, you're going to improve your team as well. So to me, it's about the mentality and the culture of this Dallas team that has to be addressed, and they have to make it be known that that's needing to be addressed because that's the only way this team is going to improve at this point.
I'm with you guys in that. Look, if Kyle Pitts is there, which I doubt he will be at 10, you snatch him up. He's a Hall of Fame talent. He's a unicorn. He's a guy, 6'6", 245, a mismatch for linebackers and defensive backs. He's going to do damage, and your offense can never have too many weapons. So I think that you take him if he's there. But if he's not, Greg, you're right. Go get one of those quarterbacks. Now, I think their defense will be improved, and I think it will improve internally. You add a quarterback in the draft, great, but it's going to improve internally with what they have. I fully believe it. I think last year Mike Nolan had them trying to do schemes that weren't best for their team. He tried to do multiple types of schemes, and in a year where you had the pandemic, where you really couldn't study and come together the way you did in the past, you're doing Zoom stuff instead of real live workouts, it was just too much for them. And even as they simplified things in the second half of the season, the defense got better. Now you bring in Dan Quinn as the defensive coordinator. He's going back to the 4-3, which fits their personnel better. When they ran the 4-3 2 years ago under Rod Marinelli, they had the 11th best defense in the league, 11th best run defense as well. Last year under Nolan, they were a 5th worst in defense in the league, bottom 2 defense in terms of against the run. And so I think in a better scheme, you're going to see DeMarcus Lawrence play better. I think Van Der Esch, Greg, and Jalen Smith can have bounce-back years. And if you get that cornerback in the draft, then you really are looking at improving that defense. They don't have to be great. I'm not saying they're going to be a top 5 defense, but if they're adequate, if they're pretty good with that offense, they should be able to win that division and then take your chances in the playoffs.
Yeah, Greg is 100% right, guys. Kyle Pitts is not going to be there for Dallas. His over-under in Vegas is 5.5. That's where people expect him to go, right? Maybe to Miami or Cincinnati. So Dallas should just perish the thought. Just forget about it. And while we're on this, like, how many weapons does Dak Prescott really need? I mean, we got to get him Amari Cooper. Then we got to pay Amari Cooper. Then we got to pay Zeke. Like, enough with that. We know there are 4 important positions in the NFL. The foremost, quarterback, obviously number 1. Left tackle is either number 2 or 3. And Tyron Smith has missed 26 games in the last 5 years. If he continues to be injury prone and you can't protect your $160 million investment in Dak, that's going to be a problem. The other 2 important positions, edge rusher, DeMarcus Lawrence, check. We know he's good. Rest of the line, Randy Gregory had like a good 5-game stretch, but can you count on him? And the 4th most important position in football, and Greg Jennings knows this because he's torched a million of them, is cornerback. And Diggs, nice little rookie year, had the injury. Their number 2 cornerback graded out as the 85th best cornerback in football, according to Pro Football Focus. You can't go into the season with Anthony Brown at 2. If you want to make him 3, great, but they have to look at a cornerback at number 10 in the draft. And, I mean, frankly, I think Greg Jennings, you guys have seen him bodybuilding. He could probably go out right now and get 10 for $150 on this Cowboys secondary. I'm not even kidding. It is that bad. And LeVar, Mr. NFC East, Washington's got a good receiving group there. Scary Terry McLaughlin. Go look at the numbers he put up in 2 games against Dallas. They must look at defense in the draft.
I think the Washington football team is the team to beat in the NFC East coming into this year. And I'm going to tell you why. It's the culture. There has been a culture shift, a shock, a shakeup that has taken place in the nation's capital, and Riverboat Ron was the catalyst of that change. Jason Wright, you know, those guys have come in. Tim Hightower is a part of the organization with reaching out to their legends. They are rebuilding and reshaping what's taking place there, but they also have a bookend signature defensive ends, defensive front. I look at this Cowboys team and I think to myself, you're going to have your hands full with New York as well. They improved at the end of the year. You got to keep an eye on New York. But if I'm Dallas, it comes down to this. You got La'el Collins. You got Tyron Smith. You got some big guys, big-time football players that are being considered to be out of their primes, past their best days on that offensive line. But you know what? When I looked at how down and dirty that offensive line was when I came in 2000 with Williams and Flozell Adams and Stepnowski was at center, and you had big L.A. Larry Allen at guard. Let me tell you something. They were old. They thought they were washed up. Their better days were behind them. And they were nasty. That's what they were up front. They were a nasty group. It allowed for Emmitt Smith to get the room, the running space, to create that space for the offense. It allowed for Troy Aikman to have time. Well, while Troy was there, and then after Troy, because I was quick when I was there because things happened. But we won't go there. But what I'm telling you is that the personality of this Dallas team was based upon bully ball, and they need to get back to bully ball. And if they're going to be the team that's bringing bully ball back to the yard in that Washington football team, they are going to have to address the fact that, listen, All these conversations that we're talking about with the defense and how they're porous, that's all about bully ball. That's all about your mentality. I'm going to hit you in the mouth or you're going to hit me in the mouth. Either I'm going to put my face in the fan, I'm going to break the glass, or I'm not. That's what it comes down to. And either you're going to bring that mentality to the table as a group and as a unit, or you're not. And that's where this team is right now. The Cowboys are not a great finesse team. When they play finesse teams, they have not been a great team without having the bully ball element connected to the finesse. They got to address that. That's the best way and the only way they're going to improve as a group.
Well, you're talking about culture and identity, so that falls on the shoulder of Mike McCarthy. And in my knowing of Mike McCarthy, his first year in Green Bay, which was my first year at Green Bay, we struggled defensively. We sputtered offensively as well. Year 2, we found ourselves because we had a year under our belt. We had an off season together. We had guys who had started to develop a rapport, a chemistry, understand the lanes that they were going to be asked to run in and actually execute in that space. And that's what I feel like is going to happen with the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not saying that they're going to be a Super Bowl team, but I'm saying that this year, Mike McCarthy is going to establish that identity. We saw him understand that I need to make improvements defensively, similar to what he did in Green Bay. He had to make a change defensively at the defensive coordinator position. Dan Quinn, I believe in him like no other when it comes to defense. I love the moves that they've already made, getting Keanu Neal. I think they're going to be better just because the changes that are being made from top down.